What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 390. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron
and John.
Oh, coming in with the half whisper.
I'm talking in the voice of a hot high school girl who just wants to buy a pen from the school store. And I'm 30 and I'm 30 years old, by the way, but I'm here with my cronies and I'm just here to buy a pen.
I'm also barely opening my eyes. That was also very
yeah. How are you fellas?
Good,
man. How are you, John? How are you feeling this week?
Way better. Last week I did not feel so good, so we did not do a show. But it's like I was bummed because if we bumped it back from Wednesday to Thursday, thinking we could talk about Loki, but then we realized we weren't going to talk about Loki because we would record before they dropped the episode because they're doing like an appointment time, like a 9 p.m. slot for it. And so then we ended up not. Then I was feeling like hell. So we didn't end up doing it that night. We may as well have put out an episode last Wednesday. So I feel like listeners are getting that little extra energy that comes with us when as Ronald yawns.
I have no energy.
I'm saying the nervous energy behind doing a show. There's a little bit of extra buildup right now. So it's like we're doing the episode that we could have done last week, but we're going to add a little bit of extra sauce to it. Surely something's happened in the last week.
I'm gonna guess Shirley, who's coming on the podcast?
Shirley,
or is that the high school student?
Shirley from Laverne and Shirley is actually coming on the show.
I wanted to talk about my short.
She's back from the dead. Yes, you're short.
Zombie Shirley.
Zombie Shirley. I screened my short the other day. It was very strange. It was surreal. Thanks.
Edit in some applause there, John.
Yeah,
I will. Well, I'll let's just we'll move our hands. Let's not make actual applause. We don't want the mics.
You want to feel weird? Write something and think that it has beats that you think you're like this is gonna hit, and then show it in front of an audience and find out what they laugh at. That's the crazy part. Like you think that something's gonna be, you're like, this is the funniest part of. No. Audiences find different things, entertaining. Like I'll make sure to another group and they may find, but the beats that I thought were like the best beats were like, they laugh. Yes. I think that, not to be weird, but like there were 8 things that were shown and mine got the best reaction, which is really cool. But there's
that goes without saying. We knew that going in, right?
There's a part distinctly where like a big thing's exchanged through the characters, and that part for some reason, like Michael Myers may have come behind a tree and cut somebody's head off. They were like, "What? I would never do that." They were like talking at the screen, and I was like, "I never thought I'd make something where people talking at the screen like this." For some,
you know why I think that reaction comes when people watch your short, Ronald, is because it doesn't feel like a big choice to you because it's the kind of scenario that you think about and that maybe a moment you've been through that you remember. But for people, it's like it's a specific moment. Like your scene that you have is a very specific scene. What happens in your short is very specific. Like so, I think that is why. It can strike a chord with people because they will picture themselves in that situation, and it's a simple enough setup and it's a short enough scene that you have time to kind of just get into what's happening in the moment and not think about anything else. So I do think that it's like I saw it a few times, so it's hard to remember that there's a little bit of a ride that you go on with a scene like that. But also I've had that experience. A short film that I helped make called The Electric Heartbreaker years ago went through. I was in that situation of being like on a bill with other films that did well and feeling like, there was something people like, not so much like ours did the best, but hearing a certain kind of reaction to something you made where it's like, oh, they laughed, but they also got emotionally involved. And it's like, you feel like you're playing you're manipulating the audience. You start to get a little power mad, but I love that observation about the moments that you think people are going to love are not necessarily the ones. That I think about that with music too.
Oh my
we can all
God,
relate
man.
to that. I think the song, you put out a bunch of songs and people pick up on this one that you're like, oh yeah, I like that one. I had no idea that was the one people were going to love. This other one that I was so proud of, people didn't even notice. I think that sometimes with a movie, it's a similar thing. It's great to watch it with an audience and learn what the strongest moments actually are. So congrats on that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
I think also like just, I mean, unfortunately I wasn't there, but I mean, like looking at your promotion for it, I feel like any kind of environment like that where you said like, there was how many other 7 or 8 other shorts that played, people that are going to a event like that, to support the short that they're there to see, of a friend, of a family, like there's such a communal, there's such a good vibe in those events, like, and we feel that a lot when we go to festivals, together, or when we've gone to screenings like that. But especially when, it's something where, they've built this event around, really kind of propping people up and giving people an opportunity. And there's like and that individual group comes out to support that short, and that you get to have them all together.
Yes.
And everybody's motivation's the same. You're there to support your friends' film, blah, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's just like the crossover is just is great. And having gone to things like that before, and what you're describing, with getting an audience that's receptive, that's excited to see all these things on the screen, that's like the one that they came to maybe support. It's like, that's a really contagious thing. And I think that like in that environment, like, they're anxious to react and they're excited to see, what somebody created. And it's like a willing audience, really, is what I'm getting at, I guess. It's just like, I love that experience, and I love that for you, that you got to do something like that for your short.
And I have my fingers crossed for something big. And if it works out the way that if it happens, how fucking crazy would that be? Can I just say what it is?
I mean, it's up to
you want, man.
Okay, I
breaking news, is that what it's like?
So we got.
When have we been able to stop you? In the past,
never. Press. We have press accommodations for South by Southwest. I also, I submitted my short to South by Southwest. How fucking cool would it be?
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's super hard to get into those things. I understand that. And there's like I've noticed that people that frequently get into these things have kind of like a press thing behind them, which is a little scary. When you see it, the wave of it, when you see it's like, you've like seen the same when we got into South by Southwest, I feel like we knew there were some people on the inside of the festival who had seen our film and liked it. So I feel like there was a little bit of that, like, dope. But I'm just saying, I know how many things get submitted, and I know like you're just hoping somebody even watches your thing. You know what I mean? And I've heard some pretty disparaging things about festivals being a racket, and you're sort of rolling the dice as to whether anyone's really going to watch it. Yeah. But I also think they do pick these things out, because I've seen people have, especially with a short, a truly short one like yours, Ronald, because yours is easy to program. Ours was 27 minutes long. And so it could only be put on like a block of like oddball shorts. It couldn't be wedged in between 2 screenings to fill out an hour. But yours is the perfect little, if there's like a 90-minute movie and they want to get something in between that and another screening before the hour turnover, they could throw a couple shorts like yours in there. It makes it easy to program. So that was a smart move, making it like one scene. So crazy that you said that, because my short at the festival that I went to was a transition between like a murder movie and like a serious documentary. Well, it was the other way around. And get it right. When we were filming it, that's exactly what the guy said that was handling the cinematography. He's like, look, this is a perfect length. You don't understand. Like, they can program the shit out of this. They'll just plop it in the middle of 2 really long things, and then you're golden. Like, man, I hope that happens. Cool. So it might mean you get 6 screenings in a weekend or 4 screenings in a weekend as opposed to 1 or 2 because of that, John. I'll faint. I will faint, and then there will be.
Let's get to the most important question, though. If it does get accepted, do you think you could find time to speak to a little podcast called Movie Schmovie for an interview on your South by Southwest? How
crazy would that be if I'm just like, nope. Yep. And I just have like a lawyer right here. He's like, Ronald is There's a guy that rolls in, in and just shakes the finger. No, what would be great would be if we did a really pretentious, like 2-hour episode that was the Ronald James interview. My lighting is different.
Yeah, your lighting is different, and like we ask you these, really like that type of serious interview question.
Hard hitting questions.
Yeah.
Right.
We
Like the
really
word
step it up.
shatter sort of questions.
Yeah.
By the way, that music at the beginning of Word Shatter, I love it. I don't know why. It makes me so happy. Anyway, yeah.
Well, yes.
Congrats on that, man. That's good to hear.
That's awesome.
That means a lot.
So we're gonna get into some random things that we've seen over the past couple weeks, in the guts of this show. But I don't know. Before we get to required viewing, was there any news items you guys wanted to talk about? I know we had possibly talked about maybe Loki, Marvel, DC. I don't know if we want to hold that or
you want to hold it to the end.
Go ahead and do it. I just mean if it's the right episode or. If you wanna...
Well, I think we have a lot to talk about. Maybe that would be good to come in next week with like a big chunk about it. But if we want to talk about it now, I mean, I have some, I didn't do my usual digging around for a topic, but I have thoughts. I have off the cuff thoughts.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we talk a little bit about just the Loki #1 episode, and then we'll get into the bigger topic stories, stuff like that, because I'm sure between now and next week more will be coming out about Marvel and DC. So Loki season 2 premiered last week, like John I think mentioned. Like we were trying to move our podcast recording around to be able to talk about it, and we're really good with the research and prep and stuff like that. So then the day of, we realized, or I think I asked, like, wait, doesn't this air at 9:00? And it was like, oh yeah, that's a problem. Yeah. So yeah, it didn't make it. It wouldn't have made it either way. But we've all been able to watch the first episode of the second season of Loki, which, just for some, if we want to say any news that's positive, I guess, for Marvel TV, is that they released like the numbers of like the views of the first episode, and it was like 10.2 million something, basically the second highest viewed show of the year, right behind the most recent season of Mandalorian, which is really great for Marvel, because the past few Marvel shows have been the lowest viewed like original TV stuff that they've done, and a lot of the numbers were pretty low for even other Disney TV or Disney Plus original content. But so that's the positive in terms of just their programming and their production. But yeah, I don't know. What did you guys think of the first episode jumping into season 2 for Loki?
Well, I would say, even like, how did everybody feel about Loki at the end of season 1? I feel like we all were pretty positive about it.
I love the first season of Loki. Yeah.
I was positive. I was kind of indifferent.
You were mixed positive.
Yeah, mixed positive.
Yeah, we call that mixed positive.
Yeah, up until the end. So I've rewatched it a little after we had our conversation. I haven't watched it in a while, actually. I want a physical copy of it, because it.
Everybody say, I want to physically watch it.
I
was trying to think of what does that mean?
No, I want a physical copy, because Disney is starting to put out physical media. I guess that's part of their desperation with everything that's happening with Marvel. That's insane, by the way, right? So
nobody knows what to do, so let's put out physical media again.
Yeah. So they were like, we gotta make.
We need money.
Yeah, we need money. So like Prey and stuff like that have kind of come out in physical, and Loki's kind of come in, and I remember watching it again afterwards, and I felt a little different about it the second time I watched it, and I think it's going for something that is pretty amazing, and I'm skewing pretty positive on it. I think once you have some other things, it kind of clears away everything else, and you're like, okay, so the first show that we watched was incredible, WandaVision was incredible, and then Loki was incredible, and then everything else was just okay. Those were kind of the top of the pile to me.
I mean, I would be slightly different from that, but I generally agree that like Loki was the best looking, best acted, best shot. I guess that's like best looking, but I mean, it was just overall, it had a look and a feel and like the chemistry between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. There's something there. There's something there that's like unique and really works. And I think where the story went was interesting, and then where it ended up was, like you said, a really strong thing. So yeah, I felt like it was the one show that felt like it was worthy of the sort of Marvel storytelling imprimatur, like whatever we want to call that scope that we got used to from the movies. And yet it felt like a show. It felt like a show that could come back for a second season, and it felt like a show that could keep going in some way. I don't know how long they would keep it going, but I think that was my main feeling about it. Was one of the more successful if this whole Marvel television show thing on Disney Plus has been kind of an experiment, it was like one of the most successful examples of what you can do with a movie character and like not diminishing the power of that character by putting them in this show. Whereas almost every other Marvel thing they've done, it sort of feels like it's halfway to a movie, or it's taking a movie character and kind of putting them in a less engaging setting. So I guess we're all sort of in general agreement. I remembered you, Ronald, had a problem with the pacing sort of the first time through. So
And
maybe if that's
do.
maybe, I mean, I like how much it's a hangout show, and I like that, like, it's not. I like that. I think I'll go ahead and jump to this. I feel like the first episode of season 2 really did a great job of blending that hangout show vibe that I like, the conversations, the back and forth, with like a really good sci-fi storyline episode, like a relatively self-contained thing that has to happen in this episode that felt really, big. Felt like, the biggest screen I could have watched this on, it would have felt even more cinematic and interesting. And I will just admit, like, adding to this cast, like, very carefully, this feels like the most calculated, brilliant casting, having Ki Hu Kwan in there as Ouroboros. He's like excellent at delivering this kind of flim-flam dialogue, but that also has a certain logic to it. And I like what this show is trying to stake out as its kind of attitude towards time travel. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a really successful episode of television, and I kind of can't wait to see where they go with the pieces they have. I like the little mysteries they have going as far as what's really going on and how many timelines we're seeing and that kind of stuff. It feels fun. It feels like it's got some spark to it.
Yeah, I feel like he is like a standout already. I think, obviously he's in a moment, like this comeback run and Oscar and all this just love for him. But I think that role seems like it's just completely tailor made for him. And, it's got there's like that sidekick fun vibe, that it's already jumping off the screen in the first episode. And honestly, in the scene in the episode where he's in, I can't even remember what the area that he works in is called, but like when he is experiencing the time slipping with Loki and like remembering it in real time, like everything's updating, like that was awesome. Like I love
that was really
sequence.
clever.
Like it was so smart how they did that. Like as they was like, he's like waiting for him to remember what happened in the past, that was really great. And I just think that interplay with Obi, what's Owen Wilson's character's name?
Morbius.
Yeah, like with his like their
Mobius.
interchange.
Morbius is the vampire character that Jared Leto plays.
Morbius is the offspring of Morpheus and Mobius.
Yes, right.
Yes, got it. I got it clear down. But yeah, dude, I just love the, like, you have the two scenes of like Loki and Obi and Mobius, and like it's like this time you could like feel time wrapping around all of them, and this Obi is in the middle of it all. Like I thought that sequence was awesome. It made that episode for me for sure. And yeah, it does feel so cinematic compared to the other shows. Like when Mobius is out, like trying to do his thing, and Loki comes shooting out, like that stuff looks like you're saying, John. Like that's put it on a big screen. Like that's well done looking stuff. Not so well done looking is the wig that pops up at the end of the episode. I can't not say it, guys. I'm sorry. No. I will call it out all day, every day.
Well, no, but it's an interesting conversation. You guys kind of got into this over text a little bit. Like wigs are a weird final frontier of like, and I think too, this is one of those areas where the resolution and the pixels and the size of the screen and the clarity, that's one of those other, it's like one of those parts of the art that we've talked about this from time to time, things that they have to change the techniques or up the ante. Like makeup has to be better now. Costumes have to be better. Sets have to be better when you can see all that detail, unless you're lighting it perfectly. But yeah, you can get some pretty egregious wigs in some pretty high budget projects. They'll just go to war with the wigs that they have. And sometimes it really does look bizarre. And this was one of the weirdest hairlines I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my God, it just jumps off the screen and just like hits me in the face. I can't get over it.
It's just one of those things.
And that at the end of the episode was like a weird feeling, like coming out of everything else being
great
awesome.
episode. And then that's
it was odd. Sorry, what were you saying? Just
the money, it's one of those things that's just secondary. For some reason, it's just not a priority the same way that like set design, and it should be, because it can really break the continuity of somebody's like feeling of, you know, diving into a scene. You're like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then you're like, whoa, what?
Well, it makes it feel campy somehow. You know what I mean? Like
It
in the middle
breaks
of
it,
like,
yeah.
especially like in a biopic or something, when they go back to a different era and someone's got a crazy bad wig, it's just like,
Yeah.
well, now this feels like a sketch comedy.
Yeah, like
type of
that's
thing.
what somebody thinks the wigs or the hair looked like back
Right,
then.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
People
When
have fake
also in
looking
Loki
hair.
specifically, it's like you have Loki wearing a wig. You know, like you know these characters are wearing wigs, like in the show. You know, like I mean, at least for part of this, you know, his run as Loki, he's not always had hair like that, nor does it look like that naturally or anything like that. So it's like it's like that. Those scenes scream like reshoots, which is a part of this whole thing that Marvel's being criticized for.
Yes,
And how they manage the TV shows, like that screams reshoot to me because something just doesn't look right in that sequence, and even in the stinger that comes during the credits also looks kind of weird. Like those things are weird, and I don't know how they fix that, but I'll just say like I thought the episode was pretty awesome, and um what really left me, and I don't know, maybe because I feel like I'm kind of drifting a bit from Marvel, is that like it was a really quick reminder, like within a minute or two of it starting, it's like Tom Hiddleston is the star in my eyes of like the MCU at this point. Like I feel like Loki as a character, and you know him as him in that role, I feel still has that magic that jumps off the screen to me.
Yep.
Which is like the best arc that, you know, like that it's gone that long and it's like possibly peaking still.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I felt that way watching Guardians of the Galaxy 3, that it was like, oh, here's that Marvel feeling again of like these characters are like
for
home
sure.
run. They're like the actor, the way it's written, the way it's being filmed. Like this is that magic. But I think you might be right about there's something. I mean, honestly, some of the stuff between him and Owen Wilson is
it's great.
Like, is it somehow some of the best acting that we've had in any Marvel thing? I don't even know how to say that. You know, like it feels just
up there.
It just gets me.
It's so good.
I get so happy when they're sitting there together, like when going back and forth about whether Loki looks bad when he time slips, and then when Mobius finally, like after trying to be supportive about it and say it's not that bad, and he finally is like it's horrible. It looks like you're dying and being born at the same time. I don't know. Yeah. I love but I feel like there's something, and I Tom Hiddleston, you're right, Steve, but I think there's something about Owen Wilson, what he quietly brings to this thing in terms of you sort of forget that guy that in the right spot, he is so good and he brings such that spark I was talking about. He's an actor that brings life to scenes when he's on, you know. He's loose, and I think that you can feel that like Tom Hiddleston is right there with it, and he's great. He's very funny too.
Yeah,
I think
it's really good.
The one thing that I think we were missing in all this run, this last two phases, was kind of the tightrope walk that Marvel used to do between seriousness and comedy that worked for a long time, that it just didn't for, I'd say, like the last two phases didn't feel like as much was kind of weaving in and out. But it's very apparent that they listened to kind of the pacing issues that people may have had about the first season, and they're like, we're going to hit you over the head with this craziness. We already know who he is. We already know some of the threat, some of the level of the threat, and to be introduced to it the way we have, and then the fucking thing behind the wall, come on, that made me feel crazy. I'm like, oh, this is it. Like, this is, there's something very like this doom that's impending. You kind of feel it in the air, even through like the time jumps that he's doing. Something is happening,
and you don't know if that was always there or if it's only there because of what changed at the end of the first season.
Yes.
And we also, because he got thrown to this new timeline at the end of last season that he kind of makes it out of pretty quickly. And at first I thought, I was wondering if we were going to spend a little bit more time in the like altered universe. But I think what they're going to do more is zip back and forth or give us a view of different versions of things so that it doesn't seem like he's trapped in a world where nobody remembers him, which would have been a cool kind of like problem for him to solve in the first episode. But I feel like they know, but we want to see him interacting with characters that remember what happened in the first season, not just off in his own world trying to yell and scream at people that don't believe him that something crazy is going on. But I am really curious, kind of what you said, Ronald, like the doom behind the scenes, like how long has Kang actually been behind this?
Yeah.
or how much has he kind of infiltrated? I don't know.
I love when he pulls
it's a cool
that thing
mystery
off the wallpaper.
Yeah,
like that's awesome.
Yeah,
like when he's in that conference room or whatever.
Oh yeah,
pulls
when he
the
shot. That's what
wallpaper
I
off.
meant when like, I'm like, what is this? This is like, this is
cool.
nuts. I mean, it's like layers and layers and layers of crazy,
but it's cool that we don't know exactly what that is. Like, we didn't expect him to do that. I didn't know that was going to happen. So I feel like as long as the show keeps us up to date with where we need to be, but keeps those kind of mysteries, I feel like it's a good, at least for a 6-episode season, it feels like a good thread to follow. So yeah, by the time this podcast comes out, we will have all had a chance to see what they do in the second episode. But
what's next? Yeah.
But we're all so yeah, we like Loki season 2 so far.
Yeah, for sure. What else is going on? How do you feel about? Oh, go. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was going to say required viewing. What was your question?
Oh, no. Let's talk about the required view. I was going to get into a way crazier conversation about DC. That is a long.
Well, maybe next week we'll do the Marvel and DC situation. I got that MCU book, so I'm going to read a little bit of it.
Hold on, let me see if that's on. What's the name of it?
It's just called MCU: The Reign of Marvel Studios, and I think it honestly goes through about the very recent era. So there will be, I think, in the book some of what we're talking about. Like it goes into phase 4 and the problems people have had with it. So
I have 8 Audible credits. I'm about to get
well, the interesting thing about the book is it's completely devoid of any like Disney or Marvel like corporate imagery or photos or anything.
Wow.
But it's got like 100 or so interviews with people who've worked on the movies. So it's like it's really kind of a not quite unauthorized, but it's not like a puff piece produced by Disney.
Right.
But I don't know how hard it goes, but I think it's going to be a mix. I think it's going to be, just try to be very objective about like the success and the failure of it. But I think it's interesting to note that it was about a 10-year run. If there was like a cap on it, it was a 10 or 12-year run where the system that they were using worked before it stopped yielding the results that, whether different people have enjoyed certain things that they've made in recent years, which I have enjoyed a lot of it. I still think that bigger question we've had, and you and I have had it a few times, Ronald, where it's like, there's a thing, if these movies were just for comic book fans, they wouldn't be being made on the scale that they are.
Yeah.
Like there's a certain thing that if you read the comics, is a big part of this stuff that like might be kind of weird and wacky for people that want to see something a little more grounded or something that pulls them in a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see, if they just they seem to be trying to like emphasize quality over quantity is the main thing that seems to be changing. But that might just be lip service. Who knows? Like with the delay of Daredevil and all that. So yeah, look forward to that, folks. If you think we talk about Marvel too much on the show, next week we'll devote some time to what's happening at Marvel and DC. And what did you say earlier, Steve? Everything's broken.
Everything's broken, man.
Everything's broken.
You mean the whole movie biz in general? Because I feel like a lot of franchises are in the same state.
Yeah, I think entertainment in general, like the way it's being delivered. Yeah, there's a whole overarching conversation about what the streaming era has done to Hollywood system and how they're trying to overcorrect. And yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. Like the way we talked a little bit about it on our text thread about like, Blumhouse taking this massive swing on the Exorcist, trilogy reportedly, and then, spending a $400 million and then producing $30 million movie, which is still that's the higher end of Blumhouse's movie budgets. And, something that is severely underperforming, like that 5-7 years ago would have been a home run. But like now it's like people don't know how to get people to watch these movies anymore, unless the remaining threads are like things like Marvel, or maybe Star Wars. But like, there's the exceptions to that new rule, but it's like, Barbie, Mario, like these movies that are huge, overperformers. But yeah, it's crazy, like how weird the whole system is now. Like I think they're all scrambling so hard to figure out, what to put where and when, and it's crazy, man.
So yeah, we'll talk about that. That'll be our topic next week. The whole system's broken, and how we help to break it, maybe by being
Possibly.
just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it was smart to stay home when we were staying home. But I can't pretend I haven't enjoyed waiting. I've waited for streaming for a lot of things. I'll confess to that, even though I do get out to the theater as much as I can. So yeah, you mentioned required viewing, Steve. This is a if we had timed things a little better, we would have had like all horror selections for October. But I think maybe we'll start that with our next round. Our next round will be our horror selections. Is that right? We said that last time, but maybe
yeah, I'm down with that. The next one, well, that Ronald starts it, right?
Yeah,
So
Ronald, you start the next cycle. Do you have a horror selection or do you not?
I think I do.
Okay. Well, we had said that. That's we can stretch it. Whatever you want to pick, we'll explain how it's a horror film. We'll find some way.
Okay, you'll find some way.
Because I was going to say, we could argue that the film I chose for this week is a horror film about high school.
Man. Yes. Okay.
It's a movie made right in the middle of the teen movie boom of the mid to late 80s. 1987's 3 O'Clock High.
It's time for a typical day at
Phil
Weaver
Joannou,
High.
and stars
There's team
Casey
sports,
Schmesko as Jerry Mitchell.
cutting class,
I wouldn't leave school without a good reason.
I
Fire
think there's
drill.
something satisfying about like
And
watching a
library
nebbish
but the biggest event of the day
get their world shaken up.
happens
A character
after
kind of
school.
feels like they're sort of buttoned down and they have control. I think that's like a good comedy standby.
3 O'Clock High, rated
like see how they get
PG-13,
shaken out
starts
of
Friday
their
at theaters everywhere.
relative comfort zone. Like a character who's sort of like a little ineffectual and a little bit, and the cowardice of this character kind of becomes the main plot of the movie. But I think Casey Schmesko is really good in this. The film is, a couple of things just to say about it right up front that would account for its kind of unique look. Is that Barry Sonnenfeld was the director of photography, and I just thought this was interesting. I was like, well, we all know Barry Sonnenfeld went on to direct so many great movies, or at least had a run there in the 90s. But I looked at his resume. I knew that he was starting to do some pretty interesting work. But in 1987, when this came out, he also shot 2 other movies that came out, and those were Raising Arizona and Throw Mama from the Train.
Man.
So he was on kind of a tear as well, as far as like, as a in the 80s as a cinematographer, just having his first movie is Addams Family, and you by that his visual style is like just so, it's not quite Tim Burton, but it's in that neighborhood of someone who really has a strong visual style. But all the Coen brothers movies he shot, and many of these other things, I think Throw Mama from the Train, which is like an Alfred Hitchcock kind of pastiche.
Yeah.
It's like, it reflects that like use of the camera that I think is all over 3 O'Clock High, where it's like sometimes it's almost like an unnecessarily stylish way of shooting something. Like there's a scene where Jerry leaves a classroom that's showing a film strip about bugs, and for no reason really, when he leaves the room, the film strip goes off track and burns. Yeah. And it's like, that doesn't happen, except that it makes a cool transition out of the scene. But I think the movie's full of fun little moments like that. Phil Joannou directed a lot of music videos, and I think you can kind of feel that. Interesting thing too, Steve, you might love this as a Spielberg guy. Phil Joannou was kind of like handpicked by Spielberg fresh out of school to work on Amazing Stories, and then I think Spielberg kind of put him on this movie. That's right. Also great trivia, Phil Joannou, when he at the same time he rewrote the script for Flight of the Navigator before starting to direct. Whoa. And he got hired by Disney and worked at the same time like in a hallway and had like offices alongside Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner.
Really?
In like 1984. So I mean, it's an interesting nexus point for Disney. Like Disney was kind of down and out in 1984 and was not like, it was, he said it was almost like he questioned taking the Flight of the Navigator job because it was like, I don't know if I want a Disney movie this early on my resume. He was like, this will make people think I write kiddie stuff or whatever. So anyway, I just think he's an interesting director who kind of, if you look at his career, it's like he's been busy. He hasn't done a lot lately, but he had a period there. The next thing he made after this was the U2 tour documentary, Rattle and Hum, and he directed a lot of videos for them. So I don't know. I just think it's like not a John Hughes movie, and yet it's in that spot of like a teen movie that's really made with an eye towards being cinematic. And there's a lot more to say about it, but I guess that's how I will kind of intro this film, because that's what I remembered about it, was just that it was like a well-made, interestingly shot movie with some good performances in it. And I remembered that it was funny. And that's why I picked it. So what did you guys think of 3 O'Clock High?
I mean, this movie was super important to me when I was a kid. I mean, so I didn't remember the name. mostly because when I was watching, I was pretty young. It was like a HBO movie for me.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I did not realize, so I was petrified of this movie, and I always wondered why. So then Aaron was watching it, and I was kind of describing the library scene. It was in my head. So when you said it, I was like, this feels very familiar. I remember the premise you were talking, because this actually happened to me when I was a kid. Somebody threatened to beat me up. He actually knocked me out when I was like 6.
Yeah.
And this movie shook me up. And Aaron was like, this is filmed like a horror film. Like, it's like these like quick zooms, and the bully's handled in a very specific way. I thought it was Val Kilmer for all of my life. Then
I can see that.
Richard Tyson.
Is it Richard Tyson? Yeah.
Yeah, who looks so much like Val Kilmer at this time. It was crazy. This movie meant a lot to me. And I think it was like the balance of the scary and the funny. And I can relate to this. The main character, he was kind of like a bland sort of guy at first, but then when you see him moving around and interacting with people, he was interesting. He was cool. And I wish he would have went on to do, you know, it felt like he was a bigger star. He should have been a bigger star.
You know, Casey Schmesko, he pops up in things, but you're right. Like, this was kind of the one that I always thought of. When I think of him, I always thought of this movie. He's got such a great comic energy. It's a really good performance because he keeps it on the line. One of the things the director said was he was afraid. He related to this character, you know, because he was kind of not a tough guy or whatever in school, but he realized like late into working on the movie, oh wait, what if we end up with like this guy's kind of a chicken for like the whole movie? What if people hate this character? And he said that when he saw the way Casey Schmesko played it, he saw that he was like, nope, for some reason he's nailing this vibe that's relatable, where instead of focusing on the fact that he's a coward for the whole movie, you're focusing on the fact that he's like in an insane world, and everybody he encounters is insane, and he has to like, it's like he has to escape from the insanity of this world where everyone's coming at him from all sides. He said they made it that way so that it would take a little bit of the pressure off of this lead character who could be unlikable if it wasn't like performed in just the right way. And the other thing is, you said he's kind of bland. The costumer kept coming up with interesting looks for the lead characters, and he said that it's one of the reasons he thinks the movie has aged well is that he tried to make people's clothes kind of bland. He wanted to, like he said, a blue sweater and blue jeans, and even the way the bully is dressed like out of the 50s, he wanted it to be slightly less dated. Like, he could sort of see what was happening in other 80s movies and realized that if you just make it look like fashionable for 1987, it's going to look like 1987 forever. So I do think the blandness of it is part of the shtick almost.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. Steve, I think
I like this movie. I remember watching it. I haven't watched it in a while. But yeah, I feel like the character, you know, like Jerry, I think Casey's
Jerry Mitchell, perfect name,
is really what makes it a like likable character. Because yeah, like the situation that he puts other characters in, you know, is not so great at certain times in the movie. So like it could be a situation where it's like, oh, that's pretty messed up that he did that, you know, like to try to avoid getting himself hurt, and here somebody else gets hurt.
His cowardice has like a corrupting influence on his world, you know, and like everything goes off track. Yeah,
right. But I mean, yeah, I think his performance really kind of softens that a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. This is like, I feel like he is an actor who, you know, I definitely remember him from a lot of things in that time frame, but like he never really kind of got into that, like, I don't know, like the Brat Pack era or that level of like actor who you'd see and recognize. But
isn't he in one of the Young Guns movies?
Yeah, he's in the Young Guns. He's in Back to the Future. He's in Stand By Me. He's in a lot of stuff, like in that 85 to 88 run. Like he's in a bunch of big movies. But yeah, this is a really fun, like high school, you know, comedy, dark comedy. Like I've always enjoyed this. It's kind of cool seeing, you know, a lot of actors pop up in it that I don't know, like I guess I don't see them as often, you know, in terms of like the 80s movies that they were in. Jeffrey Tambor, who still kind of looks like Jeffrey Tambor in that movie.
Yes, right.
Who else was it? Philip Baker Hall's in it, and I didn't get to look it up.
Philip Baker Hall is great. The character he plays it so straight. You know, I love how all the authority figures in this kind of have their heads up their asses in this kind of like menacingly buffoonish way. Like it's that classic teen movie thing of like nobody understands you, but it's like amped up to where it really feels like the world is like the walls are closing in on him. And I think that like the casting in that is, I love the Duker. Nobody escapes the Duker. And the fact that then later it becomes clear that the security guy is like, he's emulating the principal because he's shaved his head to look like him. Is like when you see them together, it implies there's this like he's trying to be cool like the principal, which is such a weird little storyline, but it's like hinted at just because they both have shaved heads. No, I thought it was some of that was really funny, but also the guy who plays the Duker is Skinner from not Twin Peaks, the X-Files.
Yeah. I saw Paul Feig also pops up in there as one of the hall monitors.
Oh yeah,
which is kind of cool.
I also think, and this is something I always think about, like when I think about this movie, and this time I remembered why I think about Buddy Revell, the character, because he is kind of a villain the whole time, and then at the very end, he almost that one scene in the school store at the end almost feels like a dream sequence or something. It's so silly how everything goes his way. But I love it when it seems like Buddy Revell disappears like Michael Myers at the end of Halloween, when they're like, he was over here. I would love it if we didn't see him again after that. But I love the way that he calls out Jerry's cowardice. Like, even though we see that he's a terrible guy, and the stories that are told about him before he comes to the school make him sound like a guy who should be, shouldn't be in a regular school population because he's so dangerous. But when he says, what does he say? He says, you didn't even try. How's that feel? It's like legit cutting to the bone of Jerry's character, and it kind of cuts through all the stuff we've been saying about him being a coward. And then I think it's kind of funny because the movie seems so aware of like, this is like a bad, this kind of machismo that's going on here that, it's going to get people hurt. And so it's funny. It's like, it's a cautionary tale of like needless violence and existential dread, where the lesson you learn is kick the other guy's ass and win big in front of everybody. It's like you almost picture the movie coming up with a less like Jerry just kind of, finds his warrior spirit or whatever and goes into this, like his pride is insulted to the point where he realizes the only way out is to win the fight, or at least to fight. But I do think it's funny that then he becomes a badass. It's a little bit like in any movie where the character's out of strength and then they push a little harder and they somehow become stronger than they were before. But then it kind of makes you think, well, maybe Buddy Revell's a guy who doesn't count on people fighting back that often. Like most people, maybe don't get a second round with him or whatever. But that fight at the end is crazy.
It's insane.
And did you notice that the crowd noise that was laid in as far as the soundscape is like this crazy, like rah, rah, roaring crowd, but the actual crowd is just standing there. Everyone's just kind of standing there, not opening their mouths, not moving around. I also think a good way to avoid racial stereotypes in your 80s teen movie is just to not have people of color in it anywhere at all, except for like a couple of folks in the crowd. But I feel like that's, and then the other thing, I remember I'd said, let's get ready for some slurs. There is like a certain homophobic slur that's in the movie twice, but I'll give them credit. It's in the mouths of the meatheads. And it's played as like something a meathead would say. It's not like, the Buddy, and it's not Jerry. It's not like Jerry says it. So I don't know. The movie stays on the right side of a lot of that kind of stuff. I think there's a little bit of weird stuff like that teacher. Now that's what I call a book report. Like the next scene should be her getting arrested. We all know that.
That was nuts. Like that. What a choice for her to be as aggressive as she was, because it was kind of implied at first. I would have kind of loved that part, but no, they went all in it on the.
Well, right. If they hadn't brought her back in, I would have thought that was just kind of a wild scene. But when they brought her back in, it was part of his too happy ending, where it's like, oh, look at all the women he has to choose from, and one of them is a felon. One other thing I thought was kind of interesting was, I never noticed this before. The opening chatter when the kids are walking up and everybody's talking about Buddy Revell and it's all these crazy stories about what he's done. You sort of assume all that is true, but then the movie ends with the same kind of pulling up to the school and everybody's talking about what happened with Jerry. And we know that a lot of the stuff they're saying about Jerry isn't quite accurate. So it made me wonder, like, are we to infer that all the legends about Buddy Revell aren't all true either? Because I took all of that stuff at face value and thought he really had like attacked teachers and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I didn't know how we were supposed to take it at the end when it's like, oh, the rumor mill is churning and now they've made Jerry into something he's not. So But I thought that was a kind of a cool way to bookend it, was with the kids walking up, like, and everybody's like, "Hey, have you heard?" You know.
Yeah. Fun movie, man. Fun movie.
So who's next? Ronald, you got to pick, right?
Yeah.
What we got?
This is, have you ever been asked if you read a like imperative book? What, you haven't read whatever? You ever read?
Have I ever read something?
Yeah.
He's saying, have you ever been
read?
has anyone ever kind of needled you about, have
it's
you
like,
read this?
hey,
Have you read that?
Have you read
Yeah.
what's an important book? What's a, because I don't know, it's the cultural, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like there was an advice book that was really huge when I was in college, like, and if you didn't read it, you were like, why are you not reading this book? Well, anyway, there's a movie in the horror genre the physical media guys used to always talk about, that I have never seen in my life. And I swear, whenever someone's brought it up, I scratched kind of the back of my, I'm like, yeah. I've seen 1999's The Audition. I've seen Tika Shea Nikke's The Audition. I've never seen it. I've never seen this movie in my life. I'm choosing it because it's horror. Because I wanted to start it off crazy. Because and I have to tell you, I'm not into these kinds of movies. I'm not into like torture porn movies, but I keep hearing, I know his style of movie. I know that like when somebody gets caught in a fight, it's like, you're going to cut their arm off, they cut their leg off, then put a shark on it, and then set it on fire, and then bring a dog in. It's just like, take it easy, guy.
And then put a cigarette in it.
They put a cigarette in it. Yeah, so The Audition. I know it's a crazy one, but it's
intense. I mean, it's definitely that. I mean, it's not that. It's not the torture porn thing can get applied to almost anything that has a certain kind of violence in it, but it's not always a fair thing to say. And I feel like The Audition is not, in the sense of that term, kind of denoting something kind of empty or sadistic. I think that movie is more, fun's not the right word, but it's a more like, I don't know. It's a more interestingly made movie. Like the way it starts and the way it builds and the way it develops into the situation that it's kind of famous for. It's like, if you didn't know anything about it, you would think you were watching like a completely different kind of movie. And I think that's why it's almost like a prank played on you as a viewer that just gets deeper as you go. But it's got a couple of bone-chilling moments, like those like one or two shots that are like, okay, that is one of the creepiest things I've ever seen, so yeah.
I'm excited. I've never seen it. It is available on Tubi. And if you are a premium Amazon Prime member, you can get it there as well. So got some places and Sling TV apparently has it for free. But Tubi,
what is a premium Amazon Prime member? What does that mean?
I don't know.
Like a really cool Amazon Prime
member.
I
know if I'm that person?
I don't know. What
You'll know. Steve, if you were premium, you'd know.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm not.
Does a bow tie show up every time you start a movie? It's like, hey, sir, would you like some popcorn? And then popcorn comes out of the bottom of your TV.
It's also on
Canopy. Seems like a certain model of television as well.
It's also on Canopy.
Oh, shoot. That's a lot. That's a lot of free.
That's the free library one. Yeah.
Yeah. Tubi has become this like insane
Tubi
source.
That's what every time you say that, I want to say that. Sorry. Tubi. Not Tubi.
Not Tubi. You think that's why they named
I always want to say to be continued, but
I like both of those. Yeah. You think they should do like a Amazon sound, like instead of doom, just like Tubi, and then it just goes.
Well, send them the sample of Steve. We just got that.
That's our ticket right there, guys.
That's how people get famous, right? Is from making.
I think that's what it is.
Doing unsolicited chime sounds and then sending them in. So, well, that's cool. That'll be a fun, but I mean, not fun, but an intense and a great way to start off our round of horror selections of required viewings. Speaking of required viewings, there's another movie that we were required to view this week by Mr. Ronald James. and I still don't know why.
Yeah.
Tell us about the mean one.
This is one of those emails that we get from these publicity houses, from getting on the festival list. And it's like, why did Ronald chase this one down? And I'd love to find out more.
You know what it is, man? It's that wave of all the properties that are becoming
like Winnie the Pooh,
yeah,
Slaughterhouse.
Yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know, a lot of the licensed names, properties that have existed are kind of in the free sort of thing. And the reason for that is a lot of the times companies can't get they can't own it twice, essentially. Like if they can own it for 50 years, and then after that period or something like that, they can't do it again. And what happens is Disney typically applies for like longer copyright protection, apparently, to own the rights to a property. And when it exceeds that time, it's free use for everybody. So what's happening is a lot of these properties are becoming free, and you're seeing like the Winnie the Pooh horror film, the mean one, which is the strange Grinch thing. I mean, that's not a Disney property, but it does happen.
Well, but it feels like they do the thing where they can't quite say it's the Grinch. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're not able to use the word, but they sure try to have fun with that.
They do.
Boy.
Yeah.
That's the screen grab for this episode is John and I going, and Ronald like, it's about 10 seconds ago, John. Just grab that one, okay?
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. And I got to tell you, I don't know what I watched. I think.
I mean, it's a little bit like shooting fish in a barrel, because these movies are not made to be great films. But I think I can see why you said, let's comment on this trend of these sort of kind of sneaking around copyright, like what would be a Lego sequel or a weird prequel or whatever, or a reboot is actually being made, low budget and as a kind of a little bit of, I don't know, it's like maybe to confuse a certain sort of person who might think it's something it's not. But I still feel like it's marketing itself as such schlock and so campy that it's not like they think they made some great movie. They know they made something that's just designed to ensnare the curious, that because there's a certain kind of movie. We all know it. Yeah. This is that. I did think it was kind of interesting though how the tone of it was just so like I don't know that the actors quite knew what the tone was, and the tone kind of changed from scene to scene.
Yeah,
and some parts felt unfinished in terms of the sound mix, and so yeah, it was a really it was a long 90 minutes. And again, I feel weird picking on a movie, like I said, that's so clearly not trying to be the greatest thing in the world. But it was, I've been curious about those other movies you mentioned, the Winnie the Pooh one and that sort of thing. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't know. I used to be able to watch any kind of schlocky thing and kind of, have fun. I think sometimes now I just find it depressing. Like, like these people may have tried. I don't know. And if they did, that just makes it more depressing.
Yeah, it was. I don't like to say things are bad.
I mean, it's hard. Like, we want to talk about things that I think it's been pretty few and far between that we've really kind of approached talking about a movie like, we're trying to dance around this one. It's kind of like it's not a good movie, like just point blank. Like it's just not. I mean, I don't know, like the idea of trying to make the Grinch a slasher is I don't know, interesting. And if the budget's not there, or the I don't know, or the cleverness of how to pull it off is not there, which I don't think it is in this. Just like the computer effects, like they just look really, really bad. And it, like, it just kind of takes you out of the movie. Like when we were talking about this, it was like it's like one of those things. And again, I'm not trying to pile on anything. I don't like knocking down something that obviously people cared enough to make, but like it just it's one of those things where it was really hard to get through the movie, like, and I'm down for watching all kinds of B C level horror movies, and
Yeah, for sure.
I just feel like there's definitely you know, with it coming out you know, this time of year, it's obviously trying to capitalize on the time of year. They're also trying to capitalize, you know, on the popularity of what's it called, Terrifier. You know, because the guy who is in that's in this is the Grinch.
Oh, he is?
Yeah,
Oh,
the guy who plays I can't remember the name. What's the name of the what is it? Art the Clown. Yeah. David Howard Thornton is the guy who plays
he's Art
the
the
mean
Clown?
the mean one in this. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's so weird that you pursued this movie because my brother's been asking me about this movie for like months.
Are you serious?
And yeah, my brother like loves Terrifier, that series. And like that's how he heard about this movie. And like he's all for like just be, you know, kind of like low budget
Yeah.
horror. We both watch that all the time.
Yeah.
But you know, so
What
I
did he
definitely
think?
told him about it. He hasn't watched it yet. He just realized it just came out.
Okay.
Like he didn't realize it had come out yet because he'd been trying to watch it because it was shot like a while ago. And it was like, you know, when is this coming out? I don't know. I'll let you know. And then when I saw it finally came out,
It feels so fresh and timely, though. Like
It does.
he hasn't watched it yet though. So I'm curious to see.
I have to say, you know, if I'm going to just mention things that made me laugh, I sent you guys the ridiculous screen grab of the woman with the Christmas hat laying across her head.
Yeah.
That scene where we're supposed to be, it's like they're having so much fun putting up Christmas decorations. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen. That sequence, the acting in it is just insane. The dad is really going for broke. I will say I was a little surprised how quickly dispatched certain characters are.
Yeah.
But once you know the kind of movie you're watching, you realize that no character is really there except to be dispatched. I will also say that there's a point where there's a really suspenseful moment and a key piece of information is discovered, and they try to get like dramatic mileage out of the line. The website is run by Mayor McBean.
Yeah.
And that hurt my brain to try to take that seriously. But I also think that just the moment when like they zoom in on the pictures to like there's photographs and there's this evidence that the Grinch has always been there, like Pennywise in the background of an old photo or something like that. But the effects work, the photoshopping they did to put the Grinch in the background of those photos is so ridiculously bad, and the camera shows close-ups of it and it doesn't even look like anything. It's the craziest thing that I've ever seen.
It's
and it, you know, but outside of that, yes, you know what this is. You might be curious enough to watch it. I don't know, maybe the right group of friends, this would be a fun one to have on, but I still feel like at 90 minutes it starts to get really long. And when it goes into its last act, I don't even remember. I can't remember what the main complications were, except that like they have to go. Oh, I remember now. The boyfriend goes out to like take on the Grinch himself, or take on the mean one himself, and then needs to be rescued.
I did like the idea, like, you know, to say something positive is like, I think the idea of where the movie went at, you know, in the opening intro, you know, like when the narration's talking about the story that we know, and, you know, one slight tweak to the story, you know, the mother comes down, is like, yes, that would be the reaction, is like, there's this green monster in for Christmas. It's like, you would react like that. That pivot, I think, is a pretty creative way to kind of get him into a slasher movie, but that's it. Like basically stopped right there for me. But yeah, so it's not a recommend for me. I got to be blunt. This is the hold up. And then, you know, if you kind of like check all the boxes for these kinds of movies, you know, these the IP that's not IP. Low budget horror movies, then it's on demand for you to find, and and yeah, hopefully you can find it and check it out if it's still of interest to you.
And God have mercy on your soul.
Oh man, it's a rough watch. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. It was. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I appreciate your apology.
we knew it was. We knew what it was when we agreed to it. You know what I mean? Like, because 100%. I've been wondering if we should talk about one of these movies we've mentioned anyway, just because it is a little bit of a trend. But I don't know. We've talked about this before, how it's like we like certain kinds of sort of extreme movies or super low budget movies or super interesting solutions to not having a lot of resources. But we're not really big, I don't know, kind of midnight movie fans might be a simple way to say it. Like, not to say that we don't ever like those, but most, I don't know. I love that movies like this exist for the people that, like your brother, they probably have fun doing it the way that I just was saying. Like it's fun to have a movie that you can kind of talk over and not feel too bad if you're having fun watching this kind of thing. But I would say that if people come to this looking for like Terrifier level gore, they'll be disappointed.
They'll be very sad.
Yeah, because it really kind of seems to avoid showing you much of anything. In fact, sometimes it just got real confusing when like crazy stuff would happen. There'd be some quick edits and someone would just be on the floor in a cave and I'd be like, wait, what's happening?
He's also kind of like John Wick. Like
you're saying that
he's kind of like one? Yeah, he's kind of like the scene where he goes to the restaurant. He's just like,
yeah,
he's doing like insane moves, and everybody's just kind of walking to him one at a time, like an action film. Just like, he just murdered my friend. Okay, let me walk into this death.
It's always a nice thing to do, is to like, take on a person one by one, make it easy for them. Especially a guy in a suit who probably doesn't have a lot of visibility.
Yeah, that was nuts, man. 0 out of 0. If I could rate it 0,
so it's a perfect score.
It's a perfect.
Yeah, that is a 0 out of a possible 0.
Yeah, there's no 5.
You guys killed it.
Yeah, there's no 5.
I like that. It's a perfect score, 0 out of a possible 0.
It was bound to fail. It was just bound to fail with that system.
Yeah. Well, what else has anyone seen?
Dude, guys, I've seen so many things.
Oh,
have you?
I have a feeling. Well, I don't know. Did you guys not? I got to read the one for Ronald. I thought you had like.
I did not.
I know you watched Totally Killer, which was
I watched Totally Killer. I need you to talk about it because you kind of gave me a little piece of what you thought, and then.
Well, Steve, why don't you rattle off the things you've seen? We'll see who's seen them. Then we'll start with Totally Killer since you guys have seen it and I have not.
Okay.
But maybe
so do Totally Killer first. Okay.
Yeah, but what are the other things just in case I can hop on one of them?
So I've seen The Creator.
I saw that.
You saw that?
I saw that. I saw Reptile.
Did not see that.
Bottoms.
Did not see.
I saw No One Will Save You.
I did not see that.
Saw that.
I saw Flora and Son.
Did not see.
I wanted to see
VHS 85.
I have not seen, but
Jesus Christ.
I saw Haunted Mansion.
Have not seen.
I didn't see that.
And I saw Fair Play.
All right. I did not see those. I saw Exorcist Believer and saw X.
I want to see Saw X so bad.
I don't know if you do. No, you might. I don't know. No, you're a big Saw guy, right?
I'm a huge Saw guy.
Okay. Well, it might be your jam then.
You're probably gonna love it then. I haven't seen it either, but I think that's the thing. If you're in on it,
some of them are bad though. Like
but this is like pretty. Well, I don't know.
John. I'm. I could give my short blast about it. But anyway, let's go back now. That's quite a list, Steve. We'll have to get some quick grits with Steve Ritter on those.
I'm just gonna give a thumbs up, down. Thumbs up, down.
Okay.
Yeah. But Totally
start
Killer.
with. Yeah, you guys both have seen that, so.
What did you think of that, Ronald?
Blumhouse strikes gold again. And it's something about it's a slasher with a weird spin.
Is it Kiernan Shipka that stars in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And anybody that doesn't know who that is, Mad Men,
Sabrina.
Don Draper's daughter, Sabrina. And I'm sorry, not Sabrina. She was on Sabrina. She was Don Draper's daughter on Mad Men. But great actress. And really it is a. Did they talk about it in the trailer? Because I don't want to just say what it is if it's not in the trailer. Did you see the trailer?
Yeah. Say what? What do you mean? Say what?
What the gimmick is? The
gimmick is Back to the Future meets Scream.
Oh shit! I mean, I guess yeah.
I mean that's what they've been promoting it as. I mean that's what the Nacha Khan, who's the director of the movie, has been. She's been on a bunch of podcasts I listened to promoting this movie. That's kind of the way that they're selling it, which the movie really does lean into both of those properties.
Yeah.
So it's taking place in present day, and the character at some point has to go back to 1987 to stop a series of murders. And so there's pop culture reference points that someone from 2023 would know. And, going back to 87, the timing, Back to the Future comes out not, a year or so before that. Everybody at that time knows what Back to the Future is. So it's like, it's a movie that that's, I think, what works really well about. I love this movie. Like, I really, really liked it a lot. I think it's very funny at times. I think that the slasher element of it's fun and works in like a real traditional 80s sense.
It does.
And that the meta of it all, I think, is really fun. Like, just go with us on this time travel thing.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen Back to the Future? This is Back to the Future. Like, she says that line of dialogue in the movie when she goes back. Like, she says, Back to the Future, right? Like, I'm basically Marty McFly right now. Like, she's like, that's how you cut through all the exposition of what's happening and how time travel works. It's like, that's what it is. But yeah, the cast is really good. The Kieran Sherpa. What is her last name?
Is it Shipka?
Kieran Shipka. Yeah, she's great. I mean, like, I've liked her in anything I've seen her in for the most part. And this is just a really easy, fun watch. Like, it's like an hour, 40 minutes. Julie Bowen's in it. Olivia Holt's in it, who some people might recognize. Lachlan Monroe. Some other people. Most people that know Natasha Khan probably know her from Fresh Off the Boat. Like, she was the showrunner on that show. Mm. So some people that you might recognize from that show pop up in this movie in small roles. But yeah, I mean, if that premise gets you at all, and if you've honestly, like, it kind of, a lot of people were like saying this movie was already done in The Final Girls, which it is kind of a similar movie, where a character is going back, to the 80s to try to save somebody, specifically maybe a family member, but the movies are similar in that line, but it kind of deviates pretty quickly. And because, like, that's a camp, it's going more for like the 80s slasher, the Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th vibe, where this one is much more, like a Scream happening in the 80s, and a character who goes back to the 80s, who's aware of Scream and what Scream is and did. The name dropping is there. And I thought that it was really good. And that's on Amazon Prime?
Amazon Prime, yeah.
That's one. I don't know if you have to be premium or not, but I'm not premium apparently, and I watched it on Amazon Prime. But yeah, I thought that was really. Aaron and I watched it together. She kind of loved it, so I was really a big fan of it.
Yeah.
Did you like it, Ronald?
I loved it. I didn't understand how it, like, that juggle, man. It's hard to do death and funny and make it work. And for some reason, somehow this worked. I mean, and the deaths happen, they're pretty brutal, and it is a mystery at the same time. So it's like all these things kind of playing out the same way that Scream was, but this is a little more like grounded in something a little more close, because the main character's mom died. So it's like the emotional connection to this is a little different than just a killer in the town killing people. So it's like, it's cool. It's cool to see this character.
Well, to be clear, that's literally what happens in Scream.
Oh, well, I was going to say when she goes back, she sees her mom as
right. That's the angle I'm saying, though. But the slasher piece of, the mother dying is the motivation for, like, the story going forward.
Oh,
that's exactly what happens in Scream.
Yeah. But she goes back in time and sees her mom going through this in the 80s. It adds a layer. I was going to say that adds the layer of crazy to it, because it's like, you're like, whoa, what a teenager do in this situation in the 80s? Oh, okay. They don't have phones. They don't have all this. I could text you and say, hey, Steve, John, there's a killer outside. That'd be the end of it. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going outside then.
Doors are locked. I'm good.
End scene, credits in it.
Or I arm my alarm from my phone, and the police are on their way.
Credits.
No, it's good. I think you would definitely dig it, John. You should definitely check that out.
No, it sounds good.
It's really fun.
I usually like those movies when they have a I mean, I don't always look for like a meta angle, but if it works, if as you say, if the functionality of like the slasher mechanics
Yeah.
is good or
Yeah.
good.
I think it is.
I tend to go, all right, this is like not just doing the meta thing, but it's also giving you what you want from this type of movie, which is like set pieces and scenes that, that escalate. Well, Steve, since we both saw The Creator, I guess I could ask you what you thought of that. Gareth Edwards' latest movie, kind of eye-popping, sci-fi epic. It's got some pretty interesting things about it. The way it was made, it's a relatively inexpensive movie compared to a lot of other genre films we see, particularly like superhero films and franchise films where they regularly spend between $200 and $300 million on the movie. This is like made for a lot less than that and looks great. What did you think of The Creator?
I really liked it a lot. And I think, and I'm going to go back to a conversation that we have all the time. I feel like I think the thing that kept me from loving it was John David Washington.
Yeah.
I do not buy into this dude at all. Like there are so many scenes in this movie where I just, man, I was like super into the movie and there's, Gemma Chan is in the movie for a period. And like, I feel like she's just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there are scenes where they're playing off each other where I just did not buy it at all. Like he's just not on that level. And I felt the same way about him in a lot of movies, but more recently, the Malcolm and Marie one that he did with Zendaya, like she's just going off the screen. And like, I feel like he's just playing catch up. But this is just another tally in my box of like, I'm out on John David Washington. The whole movie, I'm like doing that thing we talked about before, like who else should be in this movie in that role? Like who is the other star that should be in that role?
Yeah.
If that's where they're going, like who else would it be? And no. Otherwise, though, I thought the movie was really cool, and I think like John's comment about the production value, and it looks amazing. Like it might be the best looking like special effects stuff you'll see this year. I think. Like I'm trying to like I was thinking about it after the fact, like what looked better. Especially because it's a reported $80 million budget, and the movie was shot on a $4,000 camera that you can buy at Best Buy.
And Steve, I don't know if you read this in like 100 locations.
Yes, all over the world.
They went all over
Insane.
the world and found places
A $4,000 camera
that fit the story. They found places that fit like the feel, like a unique look, a unique kind of what they did with like when we first saw New Zealand in the Lord of the Rings movies years ago, and it was just all this new terrain, and they were like, oh, let's just go around New Zealand and find the places that correspond to the environments we need, and it was something you hadn't seen a million times before. But I mean, the attitude was find the right place to shoot the scene, and then maybe you read this too, Steve. Then they edited the movie completely. And then did the special effects. So they knew exactly what they needed. There wasn't a lot of try this, try that, go back to the drawing board. We created a 10-minute sequence that we don't really need, but we're trying to, it was like, we know we need like a 3-second shot of this or a 10-second wide shot. So everything was like based on locations that were real and then augmented with computer graphics, but like tactically, the way that like Hitchcock, used to famously, like Hitchcock's shooting style, he storyboarded everything so meticulously that he knew every piece he needed. So if it was a hand reaching in a drawer to get a gun, he knew he needed a 1-second shot of a hand reaching into a drawer. He got it. Like the planning made it so every effect that was created with like thought and precision, and not like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and then redoing it and seeing what sticks. Because he said that people were kind of asking like, how did you do this movie for this? And it's like, that's how they did it. That's how they created the effects they did, and the feel that they did was like start with something real and then augment. And it's not like there's no effects. I mean, there's a ton of like vistas in this where it's like, I mean, somewhere between like Blade Runner and Star Wars level in terms of just visual detail. And it's like, it gave me good like sci-fi, like serious sci-fi goosebumps at different points, and then it gave me the kind of the fantasy kind of goosebumps in other spots. I do think you're attributing it to the actor, Steve. I think in general, Gareth Edwards he kind of continues to have not so much a problem with characters, because I do feel like this movie had a lot of heart in it. But there is a kind of dryness to his world that I think makes a movie feel a little toned down, or a little bit like it never quite reaches a full crescendo or something like there. But it's such a That's such a cool movie that
It really is.
like I can't. I mean, I came away from it. I didn't come away from it like exhausted by it. But I do think that like if it fails to engage with some people, it might be because it is sort of like luxuriously paced, and it's not, it's not in a hurry to give you all this information. And yes, at the center, even if you want to be kind to the lead performance, you would say it's a sort of hanging back, laconic style performance that doesn't give you a lot of emotions to hang on, whereas a more dynamic actor in that role may have, been just the thing for it. So but yeah, I was kind of disappointed to see it underperform, or to see the kind of general scuttlebutt about it be that it was kind of mediocre, when I really do think it's got some really cool, just sitting back and enjoying the look and feel of it, it's got a very specific thing going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those. It's like a big swing of a movie, even if the scope is smaller in terms of a budget. I just like these original sci-fi ideas, even if it's kind of being pieced from things we've seen before. I just
Yeah.
it is disappointing, that it's like severely underperformed, even with a small budget and like not some crazy A&R thing, or production, publicity and marketing. Like I'm sure it's not been insane. Like it still can't make back its budget. It's kind of ridiculous. Um, but yeah, it is a high recommend for me. And honestly, the visual piece of it is like is the candy around it. I mean, I just feel like the movie. He was telling, Gareth was on again a podcast I listened to, talked about like basically how the film had two cinematographers, because like Greg Fraser, who's also a producer on the movie, shot a bunch of the movie, and then was like, hey, I have to go film Dune 2 for Denis Villeneuve, and like who's taking over this thing, because like John said, they were going all over the world to do this. And one of Greg's like proteges, a guy, I guess he's been kind of helping out, Oren Stoffer, shot the rest of the movie. And I mean, the movie looks incredible. Like it really does look incredible. And when you hear how they made it, like John and I have been describing, it just makes it even more of like a visual feast, honestly. Like the AI and these the simulants that they're called, like the way that they look, and like it just looks amazing. Like, and also just a real quick attention, like in terms of performances, the young actress Madeline Voiles, I think is her name, who plays the kid in the movie. If you've seen the trailer, named Alfie, she was incredible. She was incredible. Definitely a high recommend for me. And if you can catch it in theaters while it's still there, I was able to finally check it out on its last day on IMAX, which was amazing. Try if you can, but I don't know if it's still there now with Taylor Swift concert coming out this weekend. I think it's going to lose all the IMAX screens.
Ronald, the way that you love to watch a movie and do it right, I have a feeling this is the kind of movie that you'll have fun, like
I have a feeling, man,
testing out on your system or something. It's just made with a real, but I mean, you've seen Gareth Edwards' movie before. Even if we didn't love the Godzilla movie, we all agreed that like it's a visual,
it looks awesome.
Triumph. And Rogue One certainly has a lot of things going for it, and one of the things that it has going for it is that slightly more like dry, serious tone in some ways. Like I wish the characters had popped more in that movie, but I liked the feel that was brought to the just the look and the feel of the world in that movie. And he continues to be that kind of stylist who's able to create something that just feels a little bit more real, or just looks like he's showing you some kind of details. Like he's good at making things seem huge, and he's good at, like you said, Steve, the kind of intimate workings of those robots, and just the whole implications. I would also say, just as a sci-fi fan, I've always been fascinated with the idea of like robots. Like what would happen if we did pretty much exactly what happens in this movie, which is like the technology exists, and then we kind of decide, no, we really can't have that. And then we sort of discontinue, a certain kind of artificial intelligence. But like if it was based on real people, the scanning personalities into machines or whatever, then that means there's the possibility of like a copy of somebody out there, or a person that is the whole thing of AI right now means something different to us, because we've been debating it in terms of like, using AI to steal money from artists, and steal people's images and all that stuff. This movie kind of comes down in favor of like, isn't all life real life? Is artificial life in this movie is kind of presented in a sort of compassionate way, but it's kind of funny to be like, well, in real life we're dealing with artificial intelligence, but in a totally different way. So yeah, that's one of the ways it kind of felt like a fantasy, because there is still something kind of magic about the way how human the created beings are in this.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see it, man.
Yeah.
I've been really wanting to see it.
Well, Steve, why don't you give us the thumbs up, thumbs down, quick writs on those other.
Okay, I'm gonna run through a couple real quick,
Yeah.
and I'll try to if my memory serves where you can find them. So Reptile is on Netflix,
Mhm.
and I'll lean into a thumbs up on that one. That's Benicio del Toro, Alicia Silverstone, and Justin Timberlake. It's kind of like a cop thriller mystery, murder mystery. I love Benicio del Toro. It was a great reminder of how much I love him, and like when he's great, and he's really great in this. Bottoms, I thought was hilarious. I'd been hearing about this from every festival that screened it for a while now. It's finally on demand. It had not a great run theatrically at the end of the summer into the fall. On demand now. I was laughing my ass off. Rachel Sennett's in it. Io Edeberry, and who else was it that I recognized? Havana Rose Liu, who I've seen her in a lot of stuff recently, but just really funny high school sex comedy, just and a Fight Club sex comedy. I'll say that. I would definitely recommend that. That's on demand. No One Will Save You, I thought was great. That's a big thumbs up. That's on Hulu. That's an alien invasion thriller with like literally one maybe word / line of dialogue that may turn some people off. Caitlin Dever is in it. I thought it was great. Like I really, really like that one.
I'll second. I give that one a positive, not quite as positive, but I do think that was a really inventive movie. Like I think it got a little monotonous for me because it starts off, it gets to where it's going pretty quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's shit happening very quickly in it. And so I feel like between that and maybe the last 20 minutes or so, it didn't feel like there was as many places to escalate as it was just kind of a sustained suspense. But what they do to create that world where you don't really have a lot of dialogue or any, I'm always impressed by a movie that works a kind of trick like that. And I love the sort of Twilight Zone aspect of what's actually happening at the end. It's a good, creepy kind of
so good
sort of resolution. And I think, yes, Caitlin Dever, we've seen her before and liked her and things, but this was like,
she's great in this.
This is just like a tour de force. It's like a great opportunity for an actor to basically hold the screen for the whole time and really be the main person that you're following. So I agree. Good one.
Flora and Son is on Apple TV Plus. That's the new John Carney. If you've seen Once or Sing Street, which all timers right there, I think this one is also a thumbs up for me. Maybe not to the same level as those films. But who stood out? If anybody watched Bad Sisters, the other series that they had on Apple TV Plus last or earlier this year, Eve Hewson was on that series. She's the lead in this. Jack Rayner's also in this, who has kind of been in some of John's other films. This is a movie about a mother and son trying to connect over two different styles of music and how they kind of marry together and kind of create music together and kind of repairs their relationship. It's a thumbs up for me. It was great. Again, not as good as Sing Street might be my favorite of his. Sing Street is like a flawless movie to me, and the music is incredible. I think maybe that's where this one is a little different. I don't think the music is as good as the other films, as like memorable songs that like I would just like listen to in Spotify if I could, or when I do actually. But yeah, that was a thumbs up. VHS 85, I'll probably lean towards a thumbs down. I feel like I'm just like at some point maybe hate watching these movies just because like I got it from the completionist pieces. I got to watch all of them.
Haven't we been there with the previous ones? I feel like we were
yes, for sure.
Sort of not big fans of them. And then I feel like I'm connected to a couple of people that have worked on them. So I have sort of felt a little bad for being so down on it. I love that they exist and I love anthology films and horror anthologies, but it's maybe not my cup of tea, but I'll still check out this new one.
And yeah, I mean, like there's always like one, short or like some piece of the wraparound that I like, that stands out. But as a whole, I don't really think there was really much here for me this time around. But VH 85 is out digitally now as well. Haunted Mansion made its way on a Disney Plus. I'm kind of middle on that one. I guess I'll lean negative. I'll go with thumbs down on that one, only because of the cast that's involved. The production value is great. It looks really cool. But it's so kind of vacant and just empty to me. Like I didn't really find it that funny. You got Tiffany Haddish and Owen Wilson, Lakeith Stanfield, Danny DeVito. We're sorry, the crazy awesome cast, right? Jamie Lee Curtis. But at no point was I really totally into this movie. It's not horrible. My wife and daughter loved it. Like my daughter's actually watched it multiple times. It's okay. Like it's not too scary. She's 6. But I kind of was a little less on it. So that's a negative for me. And last one I was going to say was Fair Play, just to give some Netflix attention here. That's their new thriller that came out last week. That was a big Sundance movie this year. And that's a definite thumbs up for me. That's that's your boy, John Alden Ehrenreich. What's her name? Phoebe Devanor. She was in the first season of Bridgerton, was like kind of where she blew up. But this is kind of like a workplace thriller about 2 characters who having a secret relationship at their job. And a promotion comes up where one of them is expected to get it and the other one kind of sneaks in and gets it in front of them. It kind of just like sets their relationship into a spiral, and it's kind of exploring like workplace dynamics, like sexism, just like the financial industry that it's happening within. Eddie Marsan is always in it. Eddie Marsan is also in it, who I always love seeing on anything that he's in. But yeah, this is like a really good thriller, like just like 2 people just falling apart and deteriorating because of pride, jealousy, success. It's hard to watch, but it escalates.
Sort of like this podcast, except with only 2 people.
Right. It just escalates so nicely. Like, it just gets so tense. At the end of it, it's just like the last 10-15 minutes is just great. But that's called Fair Play. And yeah, that is on Netflix now. I think that was all the ones I wanted to rattle off. What did you have, John? You said Exorcist. You saw?
I saw The Exorcist Believer and saw X. And I should say about the Saw movies, the only ones I've seen are Spiral and this one.
Oh no. You gotta.
So I'm going to go back and watch the first one. I finally have had my curiosity piqued. This new one takes place sort of between the first and the second, I'm told, or kind of interweaves with the first and the second. And I'm to understand the timeline of these movies is already kind of a complicated thing. And this one is designed to sort of sit at a spot that makes sense to give you more of Tobin Bell on screen. And this, I'm to understand, again, this is a pretty big outing for him as a person who's on screen and we're following for much of the movie. I actually did find his performance kind of engaging and interesting. I don't really buy into, I know we're not really supposed to think he's like a guy who's got great ideas and makes great choices, but I really don't buy into this kind of premise of like the choices people make in those traps being something that says anything about them other than just this fucking sucks to be put into a trap that's going to like suck your eyeballs out, Yeah. However, there's almost a little dark humor in it. The way that with Hannibal, you would sometimes get the feeling that like Hannibal could see you do something vaguely rude and then decide like, oh, I know how I'm going to kill and cook this person, And I think that with Tobin Bell's character, with John Kramer or Jigsaw, there's that little element in this of like, there's a moment where he sees somebody do something bad and he has this kind of fantasy of what he wants to do to them. And it's, I don't know if I wanted more of that, but it was a little bit funny to me. And I was like, well, that has to be knowingly funny. They know that that this is an outsized reaction, that some of the things he does are like an overreaction to what the person actually did. But this movie gives you some real villains. Like the people he takes on in this are people who actually do have it coming. And I don't know if that makes it more or less fun to watch, but to me, it was just like so unpleasant that it's like, these people are terrible people and he's not that great. And the predicament he puts them in is awful. And what they have to do is despicable. And I just felt like there wasn't enough light or something in it for me. But I'm not saying like, oh, it was so dark I couldn't handle it. I'm just saying I felt like this is a generally kind of unpleasant movie. But is anyone going to walk out of this movie saying it was supposed to be pleasant? Probably not. So there's like a part of me that was like, God, I hate this movie. And another part of me that has been thinking about the things it did that were sort of successful. So I don't know. I will be interested to hear what a couple of fans of the series, or at least I know you, Ronald, have watched them all. If you've seen them all too, right, Steve?
Yeah,
or not. But, so I don't know. I would like to have a conversation with two people that have seen it. But my general feeling is I think fans of the series will find a couple of these traps, a couple of these predicaments pretty interesting. There's, to me, some awkward staging. There's a moment later in the movie where there's like 4 or 5 characters interacting, and someone has a gun, and that is always used in a scene to sort of say this is why people are going along with something. But I felt like there needed to be more motion or action or something in this scene that feels kind of static. It just feels like characters wouldn't do some of the things that they do the way that they happen in this movie. And I can't really talk much more about it than that, except to say that, I do think this is a reasonably well done movie for all that, like outside of a couple of little issues where I felt like a scene just didn't work for me. I'm really curious to know what fans of the series think, because I think even for fans, this is like both a throwback and I think it's different. Like the structure of it, I think is a little different from some of the other movies. It's more like a bunch of characters in one place that plays out over a long time, and less like a bunch of isolated, scenes kind of strung together. But which I think makes it more like the first movie, right? The first movie is kind of a one room.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'll check out the first one at least. And I might watch, a couple more. Ronald, I know you've been trying to get me to watch these movies forever. So
Yes.
So I will at least dip into the first one. This one made me curious enough about that. And then I guess Exorcist Believer, I'll just say, this movie's not that terrible. Like, it's not even terrible. It's just got some. I was watching it knowing that people have reacted poorly to it, and knowing that it's already kind of sunk this trilogy plan that they had, right? Like David Gordon Green is off future Exorcist movies, or is he? Like, have they announced that, Steve?
Yeah, from what I read, I read that he reportedly is not directing it. I think the script for the second one, which is to be called Deceiver, is already written. But the reports are saying that he's apparently not directing it.
Well, I would be actually curious to see what plan is for the next one, because this movie does feel like there's another shoe waiting to drop, and like it's leaving some threads dangling. But I mean, this movie just, like, we've talked about it, Steve. The Exorcist is a movie as horror fans that we don't feel particularly like. It's not one of our movies. Like, I admire it. I admire William Friedkin making, like, a guy who didn't do straight genre, did do a lot of horror, making this movie. I do understand what it is that makes it so impactful. It's just one of my personal favorites. Plus, there have been 4 attempts to sequelize this already, right? Like, there's been the second Exorcist movie, there was Exorcist 3, then there were like 2 versions, 2 different edits of a prequel. I'm just saying, this notion that this is like stepping on this perfect movie, there've some sequels that have stepped on and diminished the legacy of the original Exorcist. This movie didn't strike me. I mean, it's very much like the Halloween thing all over again with David Gordon Green, who directed that recent trilogy, if listeners don't know, of Halloween movies, which is, it's a guy who clearly has some passion for this subject, doing his own kind of take on it. I don't think this movie quite merits. It's not really that new of a take. It does a few things right. I think the first third or first half or so are actually more interesting than kind of what happens beyond a certain point in the movie. It didn't like wow me in any way, but it's, that 25% or whatever it has on Rotten Tomatoes, that just means the only 25% of the critics are saying this is a great movie or a good movie. That doesn't mean it's a 25% good movie. It's probably somewhere, it's a low D, or maybe a C if you want to be charitable towards some of the things it gets right. I do like some of, like, the lead characters in it are interesting. It's really one of those movies where you can feel from the start that the script is one of the weaker points of it. Like, one of the things that's letting you down is dumb dialogue that is just on the nose and not enough around the edges. But then in the direction and the performing, there's a little bit of life to it. I will say that when things really heat up, it kind of like, some of the filmmaking feels bad. There's also some kind of sloppy moments where it just doesn't feel like when the horror moments hit that it's done very effective. But it's still, it's got some creepy stuff in it, and it's not terrible. I don't know. I feel like it's weird that it's this Flashpoint movie. I think anything maybe Exorcist related, people would talk about it like it was diminishing a classic. But, 4 movies have done that already. So let's not act like this is the first attempt, or not. Let's also not act like this is the first horror sequel that is maybe not as good as the original.
Right.
But is this a movie that is going to excite you about of the proposed trilogy? I don't think I'm quite there yet. I am curious. I'm glad to know maybe the script for the sequel is going to survive in some form, just to find out what this movie is kind of leading towards, because it does feel like it's leaving some things unresolved that are kind of interesting. And I will say again, I don't have I should pull it up. The actor who plays Leslie Odom Jr. As the lead is very solid in this. Lydia Jewett as his daughter is really good. Also, we already know we like Norbert Leo Butz from certain things he's done. He's pretty solid in this. And I think Jennifer Nettles, is she from am I wrong that she was in because I thought I recognized her from something. Maybe I did
Is
not.
that one of the mothers?
That's one of the mothers. But she plays the one of the two mothers. I guess I'm not seeing
Isn't she a singer? Like a country singer?
She's a singer, but I'm wondering if she's acted in other things.
But like she's in like a big band, right? What is she in?
Jennifer Nettles is in Sugarland.
Sugarland, yeah, they're huge.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I didn't realize she was like a actress. She's in Righteous Gemstones.
I was about to say, is she the dead mom on Righteous Gemstones?
Yeah, that's her. That's her.
Thank, because that's what I was looking to find. Yes,
that's Amy Lee.
Yes. Well, she's good, and you know the parents are good in this. It's not this terrible piece of shit that you might have been thinking. I know that's faint praise. I guess it's kind of a wait for it. You know, maybe catch it when it hits streaming in 5 minutes.
Well, yeah, the funny thing about Saw X and like basically also the motivation from a lot of this stuff is to have it out before Halloween anyway.
Yeah.
So even if Exorcist did great, like it would probably still be coming out. I think we saw it's October 24th. That's going to be out. And I think Saw X is going to be out the 20th. So like, you know, they'll all be out prior to Halloween to be able to watch at home and in theaters still. But yeah, I didn't get to catch these in theaters. I definitely will be watching these when they come out on demand. I actually tried to go see Saw last week. I had like a little window to go and it just didn't work out. But I definitely want to see both of those for sure, even with the bad reviews for Exorcist. I'm curious now. It makes me maybe a little more curious to see it than even I was. So yeah. Ronald, what about you, man? What did you see anything else? I mean, you've been pretty quiet.
Mission Impossible.
Oh,
Mission
yes.
Impossible.
Yeah.
So you didn't see that in theaters, right?
I did not.
So you finally just watched it. Okay,
finally just watched it. First time ever. Okay. I'm ready to see part 2. That's the problem. You know, I know it's supposed to end on a cliffhanger, and God, I forgot it. I forgot. You know, I was just like, oh man, we're like 2 hours in and it doesn't feel like a resolution's coming. I'm like, oh, it is part 1, and we're not going to get that right away. But great action, amazing cast. Like, you know, it's kind of that feeling in No Time to Die where the story feels like it's kind of coming to an end for some people.
Yeah.
So you know, there's this somberness to it that it didn't have before. There was always, you know, you guys are working outside of what we've told you to do, and you know, it's always been that these guys up. But now it's starting to feel like sad. It's like these guys are fighting for a reason, and it's finally coming to the light that they're finally like, oh, maybe he has a reason for not following the rules. Maybe there's something a little more sinister going on. And I love that it only took 20 years for this to start becoming a thing where everybody's like, oh, I'm, you know, slowly within the law, people are starting to be like, oh man, like he's working towards something. He really wants to suss out terrible people. The action obviously great. Tom Cruise, it is strange watching him run because he's so intensely good at it. And you know, I can jump on stuff. I can still jump on the couch. I can still, if you put like 2 crates up, I can jump up. But I can't do what you know, Tom Cruise does. This man is a beast. He is a warrior, and it's cool to see people that still, you know, him and the Keanu Reeves of the world that really want to put on a good show. And you know, despite being a little older than some of the actors around them, look more intense and ready, and you know, just bringing their A game. It's nice to see.
Well, the Keanu Reeves is a good comparison because there's that here's and you know looking at someone now who's older, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like Harrison Ford was doing that too, of like aging up just because like especially if you can play the kind of vulnerability of your character, or you can show that your character's like maybe out of breath running up the stairs, or a little bit of I can't believe there's more of this shit or whatever. Like I think that Tom Cruise has started to fold that in. It's very slow with Tom Cruise because I do think he wants to kind of deny that he's aging on a certain level. But on another level, I think you see him starting to accept that part of the pathos and the likability of a character like Ethan Hunt is that kind of like they give him one of those sort of exasperated moments in at least every movie now where he plays a moment where he's like got to get himself together, or he's like, what you expect me to do? What
you want
now?
me to do what?
Yeah, I think those moments are kind of selling what you're talking about, a way to have him kind of aging into the part, and have it still make sense, because he's still clearly a specimen and can still do all these crazy stunts. And and yeah, you're right. The casting is important to these movies. The sort of new people that get brought in to kind of supplement the people that have been hanging out. And also, don't you think it's great that Ving Rhames clearly has like his condition is like, I got to be in an air conditioned room, sitting down,
at a computer.
At a computer. I'll do 3 scenes.
He also sounds like he's always going to get into something very heavy. You mean to tell me that we have to go over this hill and then go over this thing? I don't know if we can handle this time, Ethan. It's like this crazy, like sing-songy thing to his voice that I love hearing.
Yeah.
And you're right. He doesn't really move around like that. And what's crazy is Ving Rhames is was one of those guys too, like fit beyond fit and like 55 years old. But like, you know, he's clearly like, I'm not going to take on any of the shit that Tom's doing in these movies. I'm going to chill out a little bit. I got a bum knee. I'm going to type a little bit.
Simon Pegg seems to be saying, "Let me run on screen while I still can."
Yeah,
you know, give me a running scene.
Put me on a boat from time to time too.
But you're right, Ronald. There is a little bit of these characters feel like they're closer to the end of their life than they are the beginning, kind of. And so even if they aren't going to end the series in one more movie, or even if they aren't going to start killing off some of these favorites, except, you know, sparingly, I do feel like we all know that there's a time where it changes this series if it's a bunch of old folks sitting around pulling this stuff off. Not to say you can't do it, but at a certain point, it's like, you know, you do have to give a reason why people would keep turning to this character for help. And this movie, I think you're right, makes a good case for like why Ethan Hunt is the right hero for this caper, like why they need him.
Hell yeah, man. He's like outrunning every human on screen with him. He's so crazy to watch. Yeah.
The hands.
Yeah. New Iron Man.
No way.
I'm running away from that idea.
New Iron Man.
Oh, he's too old. I mean,
it's okay to have an old one.
You know, you're right. I'm certainly not ageist about this kind of thing, but I feel like if they were going to bother doing a new one, they would want a young guy. Maybe. But who could do it? Is there a young person that could play?
That's charismatic like that?
I certainly don't know their name. If there's anybody under 40, I guarantee you I don't know the name of the young actor who could play.
Yeah,
because it has to be the right kind of guy. It has to be the right kind of. But or maybe I'm just imagining Robert Downey Jr. Maybe you could break the mold, different take on the character. But in general, I feel like you still want him to be a, you know, smart ass like that.
Yeah.
Steve, you seem to always have your eye on a couple of young up and coming like hot guys.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who could be. I'm trying to think who would be a good Tony Stark, like under 40. I mean, God, who are the stars under 40 right now? Like,
are there stars anymore? I mean, I was watching this video essay about.
Yeah, it's like,
are there stars anymore? And some of it has to do with like that thing that Anthony Mackie said about like people don't go to movies to see the Schwarzenegger movie anymore. They go to see Iron Man.
Yeah.
And there's something about that, like, and the fact that they kind of let people know that the role can be interchangeable. Like, you know, that could be a new Iron Man. That could be a new Captain America.
Right.
Get you separated from the star of it a little more, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, I don't know. No one's really jumping to mind. Like that's under 40 specifically.
It's under 40.
Well, I only said that because I'm picturing the kind of casting they would like to do, and because I feel like I know the names of lots of actors above 40 it's really my point, but I can't picture like people in that 20s to low 30s range where like those are going to be the big names of the next. You know what I mean? Like that's who they're going to want to cast for any of this stuff. Whenever people start naming actors we've known about for decades for some of these new roles, I'm thinking, yeah, but I just don't know if that's who it's going to be. Like they like to find new faces for a lot of this stuff. So
yeah, and like someone who hasn't been in some capacity in the MCU already.
Right.
I don't know. Somebody I was thinking about.
Could Joshua Jackson do it? But he's 45, I think. But
I was thinking about Richard Madden. He's probably one of the ones under 40. I feel like,
but he's already in the MCU. Yeah, he's already
elemental. He could definitely play a Tony Stark character, but he's already in the MCU.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I don't know where they go with that.
Yeah, it's wild, man.
It's
I feel like
another day.
8 years ago, we would have been able to rattle off 20 people.
I mean, honestly, though, it's always a question: are they going to when they do that kind of reboot or whatever that's inevitable at some point? Are they going to go young with it? And I just think everybody wants to. I just think everybody wants someone in their late 20s or mid 20s or something who can pull off the gravitas, but who they know they can get like a couple more decades out of that actor.
Yeah.
Like whenever people talk about new James Bond casting, they always mention people in their 50s, and I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't think that. Maybe they will, but I doubt that. That's why I doubt Idris Elba is because I feel like he's been too old to be the new James Bond for 10 years already. But maybe they'll do some kind of cool old James Bond with Idris Elba. I just
if it's not Idris, my vote is definitely Aaron Taylor Johnson. I would love to see him as Bond.
I'd be interested because him talking in his regular accent is still like a mind blower to me. It still seems like he's doing it like an accent.
Right.
Like, was it Tenet that he popped up in with his actual accent? And it was maybe the first time I can remember hearing him. And at first I was like, wow, he's really laying it on thick with that accent. And then I realized, oh wait,
that's how he talks. Yeah.
That's how he talks. That means his American accent is better than I thought, I guess.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, that's a lot of episode, guys. That's what you get when
it's a lot of episode. Yeah.
We skip a week and then it's like vomit. We just can't stop talking about stuff that we haven't been able to talk about.
We also have a lot of stuff too.
Too much stuff. Yeah, that's hashtag too much stuff. That's our trend right now. let's get that trending, guys.
Too much.
That's the name of this episode. Hashtag too much stuff.
Too much stuff.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. All right, movieshmovie.com is the website. youtube.com/movieshmovie podcast. You can follow us there for the video element at the latter one. And if you go to movieshmovie.com, you can jump into any podcast platform that you prefer to subscribe to the audio side of this. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Ronald's pick for required viewing is 1999's Audition, and it's available Tubi, as well as Canopy. Those are both free options. And I think he said if you have Amazon Prime Premium, which it may be something that was just made up. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm immediately looking it up after this podcast because I need it.
They missed an opportunity if not calling it Amazon Premium.
Premium. I mean,
yeah.
You got to cut that out of this episode because it's going to be what the next thing is offered next week. We can't just give that away, John.
We're also going to talk about how everything's broken, how the franchises are broken next week. We're going to dig into that subject.
We're going to dig deep on that one. Hours. Bring your comfy clothes for that one, guys. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. And as always, you made our day. Thanks.
Bye.